Welcome, David Ware. We're so honored that you would come. And on behalf of Pastors John and Chantel, I know they love you and they've known you for a long time. So they're very honored that you would be with us tonight. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. Such an honor. I love them. They're awesome. Me and Chantel go way back. Like when Hillsong Worship was called Hillsong Live, we used to like tour together.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She's like my
I'm
big
just,
sister.
I'm just going to ask you if you could just give us, can you just tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. So part Fijian, part New Zealander. Um, live in beautiful Sydney, Australia. One of the creative pastors at Hillsong Church here in Sydney. Lead worship, write songs, and I also pastor some of our crew that are in the music and entertainment industry here. And so, yeah, that kind of keeps my life busy. Apart from that, I'm married to a beautiful Filipino woman named Marielle and have 3 boys, Connor, who's 0, Louis, who's 4, and Carter, who's 7. And yeah, get to be part of Hillsong Worship with Brooke and be a part of that big world. And then, yeah, just here building church here in Sydney and whatever I can do across the globe in terms of our church and friends like you guys. So that kind of keeps me busy in my week and in my life.
That is awesome. And we are so honored that you take time. I know you said you had a crazy day today and it's like 9:00 where he is right now. So we're definitely.
You can hear it in my voice. My voice is like so coarse right now. I don't usually sound this manly. Like I don't.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening at the moment. Obviously, we're facing so many challenging things at the moment, from going to COVID now to what's happening with George Floyd and what's happening in the world. I would say there's so much unrest at the
Yeah.
minute. And how do you think, just as creatives, we can make a difference in the world and what's happening at the moment?
I think there's an immediate reaction, I think, and then there's the long-term response. I think the immediate reaction is to not ignore how people are hurting and feeling and the truth, I guess, about what's actually going on. And I was going to say, however you feel comfortable, but not, I feel like it's time to get out of our comfort zone. Not even just in a posts and da 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 da, but just in like re-examining and reassessing like the inner self. Like, what do I harbor? What am I allowing to be permissible in my presence? What am I allowing to think and things like that? I think it's a wake up call. So the immediate reaction I think that everyone should do is go, it's so real and it needs a now reaction. I think the long-term response, for creatives, especially Christian creatives, is I think as Christians, as believers in Jesus, our niche is hope. And I think our long-term effort should be justice, should be making things that are unjust come to the forefront and be aware of it and recognize it. But hope, what an opportunity to sow hope into the world. What an opportunity to say, Jesus said this would happen. Things are going to go downhill, but when the world is at its darkest, that's when our light shines the brightest. And so I'd say the long-term response for creatives, especially Christian ones, is to go, cool, so how can I sow hope into the society that I live in? How can I sow hope into the community that I live in? How can I be Jesus in terms of what I sculpt, what I write, what I paint, what I author? And I think the long-term achievement of Christians is that in a world that's so dark, we get to be compassionate and represent our brothers and sisters who are hurting and weep with them and celebrate when they get wins and all of that stuff, which is super important. But the long-term thing is, what does Jesus want? He wants hope for humanity.
Yeah.
He didn't come for the well. He came for the lost and the sick and the hurting. And he sowed hope into all those situations. So that's what I think, man. I think anytime Jesus had the opportunity to judge or to be dismissive or to be to go along with the status quo, he just kind of said, "No, that's not what we're doing." But he never focused towards a negative outcome. He focused towards hope, and this is salvation. This is healing. This is wholeness. This is, um, dare I say it, like in Hear My Heart, like this is prosperity. This is living in abundance. So that's what I think we as creatives can do. So that was a long-winded answer
No, I
for
love
that
it.
question.
I
I'm just
love it.
passionate about it.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I saw so many even artists in our community drawing pictures of George Floyd. And like it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see those different expressions. And you were saying you even wrote a song, relating to the situation. Can you tell us a little bit about the song that you wrote? I'd love to hear.
Uh-huh.
Love to
I
hear
mean,
it.
I haven't ran it past Robert and Amanda, so it'd probably be remiss of me to, you know, to make it go. I mean, I sang it over our college students today, as a bit of a prayer for them, and especially we have a multicultural college,
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
I think about half of our students are from America, and so I wanted to gift it to them to be able to sing, and it basically just talks about, like what I was saying. I just wanted to sow a bit of hope without ignoring the truth, and the first few lines are like, your love goes deeper than the sum of all my sins. You
Wow.
don't define me by the color of my skin.
Wow.
You hold me closer. You call me a child. Your love is deeper,
Wow.
and so I think, yeah, I think you can't ignore it,
Yeah.
but um, and I hate saying the word "but" in situations like this because it's, you know, but Jesus, um, was Jesus definitely about justice,
Yeah.
but he's also so much about hope.
Yeah.
And my hope in it all is that 50 years from now, we will see the change that needs to be made, and then we get to continue saying, "Look to Jesus.
Yeah.
Didn't you realize Jesus was the answer for all of this anyway? Didn't you realize, like, you know?" And so that's our part that we get to play.
That's so good. Thanks for sharing. I know you can't sing the song properly yet, but I just wanted to hear a little bit about the background. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, or we'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of your journey to where you are now, like just a bit about you growing, like your journey from when you grew up to now, and how did you end up at Hillsong and all that stuff. Give people
Yeah.
something to kind of, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. And I grew up in a rough neighborhood. Um, Went through a whole bunch of stuff when I was a child, went through abuse and joining gangs, and was in a police program when I was 12 years old because there was classes of troubled youth, and so they'd take you away on these boot camps and just basically just like train you and like teach you life lessons and stuff like that, which I actually found really helpful. Um, and then I think when I was about 17 and a half, I kind of like was really depressed. My childhood stuff caught up with me. I was making pretty bad decisions in terms of life and wanted to kind of do something silly, um, stupid, and I'd always grown up knowing God, and always grown up, believing there was a God. I just never had a real revelation of how much He really thought about me and cared about me. And so I remember just being at my lowest point and just going, God, like if I keep getting hurt by people that are meant to love me, and if I keep hurting the people that are meant to love, then I kind of don't want this life. And I went through this really dark moment, and God just really showed up, revealed Himself to me. And then I decided I wanted to follow Jesus. I wanted to try my parents' religion for myself, but for real. I left my parents' church, went and founded my own church. Not founded, found my own church. Um, and then started this crazy journey. And, growing up in an islander family, I learned how to play drums, guitar, bass, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so when I joined the youth group, I started playing drums, and that was really cool. Because I was like, oh, cool, I'm actually needed here. Like, I can serve, I can contribute, and would sing every now and then. And then that church became a Hillsong location. Our senior pastor, who was mates with Pastor Brian Houston, said, like, we feel called to another place. Would you want to take this church on? And Pastor Brian graciously said yes. And then we became part of Hillsong. And I remember thinking in my head, I'm like, Hillsong's got a lot of drummers, got a lot of singers. So I'm going to put this down and I'm going to focus on like producing music, which I also did, got involved with growing up. And I felt God clearly instruct me to do the opposite of what I naturally wanted to do, which was to do the producer thing and stay in my comfort zone, because a lot of people thought that I was good at it and whatever. And God was like, no, I want you to sow into church. You're a church builder. That's what I've called you to be. So do that. And I remember playing drums for the first weekend as like Hillsong Southwest, which is what it was called. And I get off the stage and I felt like it went pretty well. And then the pastor comes up to me and just goes, you're not playing drums ever again.
Oh,
And
no.
I was thinking, and I was like, oh. And he said, but we heard that you can hold a tune, and we don't have a lot of male singers, so you can sing if you like. And I thought, well, I'm here and I just want to be obedient to God. And so that's what I did. And then 14 years later, I started this incredible journey of just meeting people that I'd looked up to, people I hadn't met yet, but now I really look up to. And I've gotten to travel the world with our church, representing Pastor Brian and Bobby in Hillsong, and seen so many lives come to Jesus, heard and read so many testimonies of people healed and marriages restored, and long lost fathers reunited with their kids, and all of that stuff. And so so now I came on staff about 10 years ago. I was about 25, and I oversaw that campus that I was a part of originally. These days I live at the Hills campus, which is kind of like ground zero. It's the HQ, and get to oversee our worship leaders, and then still like I also oversee and pastor a lot of our music industry and entertainment industry guys. So that kind of fills up my time and it keeps me pretty busy.
That's amazing. How would you like encourage just those maybe that are creatives that kind of aspire to be something or like go somewhere? Because you were just saying it kind of just you weren't really looking for it. It kind of just came, didn't it? Like I don't know how you can kind of
Yeah.
encourage people that might be aspiring to be like professional photographer or an artist, a well-known artist, or a worship like in the music industry, something like that.
Yeah, I would say like I've called it the God adventure. Like things rarely ever turn out the way you specifically plan them to turn out, and that what you desire and what you thought was the calling on your life, and then what God actually does with your life. The space in between those two, I call them the God adventure. And I say to a lot of our young guys, like, you rip yourself off when you hold this so preciously that God can't do this for you. And so, like, I'm a drummer. If you were to meet me 14, 15 years ago and you said, tell me about yourself, I'm like, I'm a drummer, love drumming in a worship team. And then the other stuff was secondary. Yeah, I mean, I like singing and play a bit of guitar and love to produce hip hop music. Um, and I look back and I think, imagine if I held so tightly to the drummer thing, how much I would have missed out on
Wow.
in terms of what God's called me to do. So there's that aspect. And the other thing is um, like you never, like, there's no substitute for hard work. There's no substitute for just going. If you're really, really, really serious about this, you'll work. You'll be the hardest worker in the room. You'll write more songs than the other guy. You'll paint more paintings than the other guy. You'll invest more money into your craft than the other guy. And you just got to go for it. And then the third thing I would say is, godly counsel and leadership.
Mhm.
Like, get around some honest people. And if you aren't that good of a drummer and you think you are, hopefully you have people around you that say, look, maybe not.
Like they did with you. No, I'm
Yeah.
just-
Oh, that's exactly what happened.
how would you say that you obviously with Hillsong, probably not as much free time during this time. I know our creative team has been busier than ever during lockdown and all that. But in your free time, how do you incorporate creativity? What do you do in your free time? How do you craft your skill? Um,
Yeah. Well, I invested, maybe money that I didn't necessarily have to invest into like you can't see it right now, but right now I've got like a studio desk, I've got some studio monitors, I've got interface, keyboard, the sampler, this and that. I really love producing like hip hop music. Um, and so I would just say, like, again, there's no substitute for hard work. We've all heard about the 10,000 hours from that book, The Outlier. And I've never read the book, but I know the concept really well because I, I wouldn't say I've reached any kind of success with anything. Even as a worship leader, I think I'm still a rookie, and I think I've got so much to learn. But like, there's something fruitful about just putting in the hard work.
Yeah.
And so what I do, and to literally to no end, except to I just want to create beautiful things, like
Yeah.
beautiful music. And so, yeah. And so in my spare time in this season, I've just kind of created a time and a space to lock myself away and just go, cool. I'm not going to leave here till I've finished this song. I'm not
Yeah.
going to leave here till I'm happy with this. I'm not going to leave here till I'd be pumped if I heard this on the radio.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that answer your question?
No, it did. It did. I think with you, with Hillsong, like you were saying earlier, you traveled the world, like you probably sang in arenas of I don't know how many people. How do you kind of keep um because it's so easy to when you're doing that to kind of um get carried away with that of being in front of the 25,000 or whatever, but then losing the other side of it. How do you keep that, God at the center of everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I feel really privileged to be able to be a part of our community as Hillsong. I think we have such a solid community that continually doesn't put you down, but reminds you, like, the part you play is not bigger than the cause you're a part of, is what Pastor Brian always says.
Love that. Yeah.
And I think in our culture and here in Sydney, like the same, like JD um, is the same guy. I don't know if everyone knows JD. He sings for Hillsong United, but and his ridiculous energy and passion for Jesus and loves to see people come to Christ. And you put him in front of 25,000 people and he will dominate in telling people about Jesus and how much he loves them and how much he's done for him. But then you put that same guy in a prayer meeting of 10 people and he's like not a different dude,
Yeah.
and it counts to him. And that's the culture we kind of exist around. And I attribute that to my leaders, to Cass and Rich Langton, our global creative pastors, but then also Pastor Brian and Bobby, who started this thing 36 years ago and built that culture from the ground up. I do think, though, that every person, even in our culture, you can get it wrong and you can start to think you're a bit bigger than you really are, and you're more important than you really are, more, whatever. Um, and I think everyone has a personal responsibility. To put it back to Jesus, like Jesus didn't say he was going to build a worship leader or a worship team or a record label or a publishing company or conferences. He didn't say I was going to build like a business. He says, upon this rock, I'll build my church. And
Yeah.
it's the church at the center that the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And he was looking at a man when he said that. He was looking at Peter. And so I think in our culture, everyone's a church builder first,
Mm.
and then we're worship leaders, and then
Wow.
hopefully we're worshipers first, we're Christians first. But in terms of our outworking of our calling, I think it's so important to remind yourself, okay, what did Jesus say he was going to build? I'm going to build my church. Cool. Is what I'm doing actually helping to build my church, the church? And I think that's a good starting point
I love that.
to.
I was actually listening to an interview with Carrie Job, and she was talking about how important the local church is and being a part of the local church. And I don't, can you encourage kind of I guess, guys in our church, how important it is to be a part of the local church? Because I feel like everything what you're saying is, everything does stem from the local church. Like, wait, the scripture, on this rock, I will build my church. Like, he's not saying individually, but can you encourage our guys like how important the local church is?
Um, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it more than than that. Like Jesus, that's what Jesus said he was going to build, and we are co-laborers with Christ in that effort, and it's not in vain. And I would encourage them by saying, like, how did you find Jesus?
Mm.
How did you learn about Jesus? How did you, when your mother was sick in hospital, um, wasn't it the community, the church that prayed for your mum?
Yeah.
And hopefully, if you're in a healthy church, that actually happens. I know in our church that happens.
Yeah.
And the fruit that comes from it, I will turn down. And I hope this is true for the rest of my life. But I will turn down the world to help Jesus build his church. I remember me and my wife were both on staff here at church, and we love our hypotheticals, um, and I just remember saying to him, like, even if I get fired tomorrow, and
Mm.
I was told I could never lead worship again, my kids are still going to grow up in this Sunday school.
Yeah.
My bum will still sit in that seat or those seats at church. You're still going to go to sisterhood. I'm still going to connect with the godly men around me, because like our life now is just intertwined with the house of God. And I've seen the immeasurable fruit that comes from that. And it's had its ups and downs, and I've been disappointed, and I've been overlooked and overworked. I've been, all of it.
Mm.
Um, but there's this passage in Ephesians 1:3, talking a lot. I've got really long-winded answers, I'm sorry. But there's a passage in Ephesians 1:3, and one line of it stuck out to me. And it says, give praise to God the Father, who gives us every spiritual gift in the heavenly realm, because we are united with Christ. And that because you are united with Christ really stuck out to me. And I was trying to flesh that out. What does it actually look like? What does Jesus care about? He cares about the broken, the individual, cares about salvation. And he said he was going to build his church. And so if I'm united with Christ, then I'm backing his plan, which is, uh, you know, doing whatever I can to ensure that the kingdom of God through his church, advances, whatever it looks like.
Yeah. That's really awesome. I love that.
Mm.
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe someone that inspires you, how you get your inspiration, someone you admire, just in the creative world?
Yep. Jesus, a lot. There's a lot. I think there's different parts of my creativity that draw from different people. If I'm thinking about like music production, there's a whole bunch of like non-Christian hip hop producers that I just, when I listen to their music, there's a guy called Scott Storch, and if you're really religious, probably don't look him up, because he's usually got like something that we wouldn't use in his hand um, when he's producing his music. But you just look at him, he's like, he just goes for it. And I'm not the best keys player, and he just just flows on the keys, and that's really cool. Uh, yeah, there's so many people. Um, it's kind of hard to pin down. I think I got the revelation a few years ago that there's no one really alive that, like, if you were to say, who would you want to be in 10 years time?
Yeah.
Who would it be? And I've never really been able to lock that down to one person, because I love Robert Ferguson's teaching, but I love Joel Houston's songwriting.
Yeah.
I love Scott Storch's producing. I love Pastor Brian's leadership.
Yeah.
And I guess I've just managed to learn how to be mentored from afar by all of those people,
Yeah.
and a couple of them up close. And yeah, so that's kind of my answer. I don't know if
Making
that makes
all of those people into one.
sense.
So
And you've got me.
all
You've got me in 10 years. Just kidding.
could you tell us maybe one of the biggest challenges you faced as a creative recently, or in general, or in the past years, past
Yeah.
year?
The challenge is when the challenge is when you hit gold and you try to form a formula from it.
Mm.
I remember someone saying, I don't know who said it, but they say good taste is the enemy of creativity, or something like that. And I'm always getting a revelation, like revisiting the thought of like, just because it worked that one time means it might work another 10 times, but there's something fresh here that you can discover if you just like wipe the slate clean. And so that's what I try to do. I try not to be so classy and so well polished and well professional that I miss. I won't, I'm not one of those guys. Like, I'm 34 years old this year, and I love what the 12-year-olds are listening to. Like, I force myself to love it because it's new and there's something fresh about it. And I want to be reinvigorated by the next thing, not just lock into the music that I listened to when I was 12 or 18 or whatever. So I think my biggest challenge is just going, cool, I know this works and I know you're good at it, but try something new, pivot and shoot, pivot, shoot, and see what comes out. And I've just found that the most beautiful songs and the most beautiful conversations and messages come out of me going, I know this works, but if I just pivot a little bit, then maybe there's something different that I could be exploring.
Yeah,
And it's been really cool.
that's really cool. I have another question about what would be one of your biggest wins?
Marrying my wife, I guess. She's pretty amazing.
In the creative world, what do you feel like would be, obviously that's a huge win, marrying your wife. But what
You
would
should see,
you say?
you
Sorry.
should see her look at me and you'd be like, yeah, he definitely won.
I say that about Pastor John all the time. He's definitely won. That was definitely his biggest win,
Oh,
marriage.
hands down. Hands down.
We still don't know how he's done it. We still keep asking him.
Uh,
But in the creative world, what would you say would be one of your biggest wins? Um, yeah.
it's going to sound real tacky and real like Christianese, but I think my biggest win is like I haven't stuffed up my life yet.
Yeah.
I think for what I want to do in life and what God's called me to do, I think half the battle is integrity and character and consistency and all the unsexy, uncreative things that allow me to do what I'm doing today. And I'm definitely not saying perfect, but I'm almost surprised, that God still trusts me and that I haven't stuffed it up big enough that I've been cancelled from everything. Um, and I think that's important to me. I say my wife because I think I could not be doing what I'm doing unless God had put her in my life. And it is one of the most important. If there's anyone listening that's not married yet, are you married?
No,
No.
I'm listening.
There's a bit of advice for you. Um, I think the single most creative thing, and even just in general, is like who you want to spend the rest of your life with
Wow.
will determine everything about the day you get married onwards. And it's the little things of like, you're passionate about this, but it obviously doesn't line up. And so this becomes so harder and harder to do because they don't have a revelation of why you want to do that. And like when I'm like my wife like allows me to tour, allows me to do late nights like this, allows me to, and she like literally gave me the biggest smile and gave me a kiss just before we started this. And I'm like, man, like I know people who aren't married to that person. And when they want to do something where God's called them to do, make it so hard, it's a point of contention. The kids see it, the
Yeah.
friends see it. There's that wedge between you. And I just,
Wow.
would never be bold enough to say you married the wrong person, but I'm just thankful that I married someone who allows me to be the hip hop producer that makes videos and wants to rap, this day, but then we'll lead worship and then we'll want to do a Zoom meeting and then will cheer me on and be like, so proud of you, like I think that's golden. Um, yeah. As far as like creativity, I think specifically in terms of craft, my biggest passion is leading worship. It could be a room of 10, 100, 50,000 people, whatever. There's something that just clicks when I can see someone and I have the honor and privilege of being able to connect them with Jesus, and you see it through tears, you see it through smile, you see it through dancing. Sometimes you see it through absolute stillness and you just know this person's having a moment with God. And I don't know, that'll get me out of bed every day. If that's all I ever get to do for the rest of my life, I don't get to write any songs or travel, or if I just get to connect people with Jesus. I just think there's something beautiful about that.
That is beautiful. I love what you said there about I'm taking that advice, the marriage thing.
You got a boyfriend?
No. No, I'll take that advice though.
Okay.
Um, so I was thinking about Hillsong and just I love, especially when I was there, they give opportunity to so many people. I feel like Hillsong's all about, raising up the next generation or just bringing new people forward. And I learned that especially a lot from Pastor Chantel, where when I lead worship, I don't want to lead all the songs. I want to give other people an opportunity to really use their gifting and see, the 14-year-olds that are leading beside me, what can they bring as well, because God's anointed them. Um, Kind of how do you do that at Hillsong? Like that's definitely one of the things that I love about Hillsong is they're constantly giving new people opportunity. And how
Yeah.
do you kind of like hone in, okay, that person, I want that person.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the trap door with it is when you give someone a platform that there's a few things they might not be ready for, that they haven't built the trust with the congregation or the platform that they need, and then maybe their life doesn't line up with where someone who is given opportunity, you know,
Mhm.
and I think it's awesome when you are going for what you want, what you can identify what you don't want.
Mm.
And so I think my leaders, Jad oversaw worship leaders before I did and still has a lot to do with it. He taught us, if you're the leader and you're bringing someone through, you're assuming all the risk.
Mm.
When we put a young person on with me, like,
Yeah.
and we're in that service, they're young, they aren't trusted yet by the congregation because it's a relational thing. Leading worship is a pastoral thing, and that you need to be trusted. And then also, like, what does their Monday look like? Hopefully that
Yeah.
lines up. The opportunities that we're giving them. So when you realize, okay, so we want someone that is, we don't want someone that's not trustworthy. We don't want someone that lets the platform go to their heads. We don't want people who actually don't have a revelation of Jesus and have a relationship, like a flourishing relationship with him. And so when you get that, it goes, cool. Well, then who's here that models that? Man, heaps of people, you know.
Yeah.
And what's funny is even sometimes the people that are the best singers or musicians
Mm.
aren't included in that group.
Yeah.
Um, and I got friends that would tell you tomorrow who sing on the biggest platforms that they go, I have no idea why I get to do this because I don't sound anything like
Yeah.
Torrin or Taya Smith or whatever. Taya Gork Rogers, sorry. And so, yeah, I think as leaders, you assume all the risk, but once you eliminate what you're not looking for, then it's easier to go, cool. And you just don't waver from that. I know that person sings really good, but there's this part. And
Yeah.
so let's not throw them out, but let's work on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so why are you doing this on a Monday? You think you're called to lead worship on a Sunday, and let's work through that. And so then we've been able to do that journey with people, and Pastor Brian and Bobby are just the most empowering. When I became part of our church, I was 20 years old. Definitely did not think that I was cut out. I thought there's so many people that sing better, so many people that have been around longer, and then I got became part of the community, and then I realized what was what. Oh, it doesn't matter how good or bad I sing. That doesn't mean anything in terms of my worth in this community. And it just made it easier to get plugged in, learn the culture, get deeper with my relationship with God, and then just see God be able to open up doors for me. And now I get to do the same thing with other people where, I'm the guy now here in Sydney where I'm texting Jad or Cass and going like, there's this one person,
Yeah. I
da,
love
da, 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 da. And their first response is like, how's their heart? Like, and I go, man, how good is our community?
yeah.
So I think that's cool. When you know what you don't want, it's easy to then go, well, this person could be awesome and this person could be great. And then you end up making the right investments. I think there's a lot of people that get given opportunity in churches, but there's not a lot of people that can sustain, the weight of what it means to become a worship leader, a musician, or a preacher. And so then their ministry life is short-lived because they're not, you know.
It's
Does that sound
huge.
anything
Yeah.
like what you want? Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. Like the calling is huge, and there's so many sacrifices that come with it. And I think one of the things that I've learned is as soon as I lay down something that I've wanted, or that's when it comes. As soon as I like let it go and I'm like, okay, actually, this doesn't matter anymore, that's when the opportunity comes. And I feel like that's a lot for not even just for worship team or whoever, but for anyone that's looking for opportunity. I feel like as soon as you let it go and you sacrifice it and you're obedient to God, God's then like, actually, okay, I want you to have it now, and I love how he does that. I love that he lets you let it go. Well, it's a painful process of letting something go. It's a painful process, but letting it go. And then he's like, actually, I have something even better for you. I've seen this picture of this little girl that was holding, like, I don't know if you've ever seen that picture. There's this little girl that had like a teddy bear or something, and it was taken away from her, but God had like this huge teddy bear behind his
Yeah. And
back.
yeah,
I
behind his back.
love that illustration because
Yeah.
you think that this is what God has for you, but actually he's
Yeah.
got something so much greater for
And
you.
you think you're ready for it. I
Yeah.
remember for the longest time I wanted to become a worship pastor, like a creative pastor we call it now in our church. And I remember 2 times I got overlooked for a role. And, I didn't beat myself up too much the first time because I was like, yeah, I'm pretty young. And then the second time I'm like, man, I'm working hard,
Yeah.
showing myself to be faithful, this and that. And, the role went to someone else. And then when I finally stepped into the role when I was 25, I remember looking back to when I was 22 and 21 going, man, if I had taken this on then, I mean, I'm getting stretched now.
Yeah.
Imagine if I was a 21-year-old punk and having to carry all of this. And that was God being kind. Same picture.
Yeah.
And he's saying, you wanted this at this age, which is this little teddy bear, but just wait
Yeah.
because I've got a bigger teddy bear for you that you can't hold right now. And I want you to be able to hold it. Yeah.
And I think it's like asking yourself the question in that when you don't get what you thought you were going to get, like, what God are you trying to teach me?
Yeah.
How can I grow?
Yeah.
Because it's not just, oh, this just person, they've just missed it. Actually, God must be trying to teach us something in the process, and he must have been kind, for me, I've stepped into overseeing our creative team like a year or so in. But Pastor Chantel was kind of overseeing all the creative, and she had to go along. Obviously, senior pastor, there's higher responsibility there. So she handed it over to me, and then I was kind of like, okay, this is awesome, but you just don't know what to do with. If I would have been handed that responsibility straight at the beginning, I probably would have been like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? And then learning how to pastor people through that, because that was something God had to teach me because I'm a very driven person. Let's get it done. But God had to soften me and build me into who he needed me to be in order to lead people with grace and with love like Chantel does, because she's really good at that. She's
I
like
agree.
one of the most gracious people I know.
I don't feel like there's anyone more disarming than as soon as you start talking to her, you just like feel good about yourself.
Yeah,
She's,
totally. And you can be mad, like you could be mad and then you leave and you're like, I came with something and I don't even know why I was upset, because you leave feeling so much better. And she's so, so good at that. I do love them a lot. Um, well, I'll bring it to a close so you can get on with whatever you need to get on tonight at 10, almost 10. But can you give us, what's your best piece of advice or wisdom that you want to give to our creatives as a team and moving forward? Obviously, it's June now. It's almost the middle of the year, crazy. Um, but how can you help us, or just with the rest of 2020, I guess?
okay. Um, I think what's helpful, I've got 2 things I think that's been on my spirit for creatives. Um, my lifelong thing, and I can be bad at this, so I'm kind of preaching to myself. And I think we touched on it a little bit, but I didn't frame it like this. which is God has to come before the God dream.
Mm.
You can be called to be a worship leader, but then use worship leading to distance yourself from God. Well, I'm doing this for you, God. I'm doing this for church. I'm doing this for him. And what God desires the most is proximity with your heart. And he just wants to know you. He wants to be close to you. He wants your imperfections. He wants everything. He wants those thoughts that you're ashamed of. He wants all of it. He wants to be completely let in. And often as creatives, we get so caught on the thing that we're doing, the function that the role we play, that we can almost use that as, oh, but this is part of my relationship with God. No, that's you serving the master. That's you serving the house. Your relationship is being an authentic, fully committed Jesus follower through the ups and downs, through your doubt and unbelief, through your victories, your valleys, your success, your failure, and just going, God, here's everything. And I found when I've been in that place completely, I truly feel like I could never lead worship again. I just love Jesus so much.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do another thing for me.
Mm.
I'm pretty passionate about that, and I get it wrong, like I said. And I get busy with church, and I get busy with online church, and I miss my daily reading because I have to be at this early call time instead of just getting. I do it. Like, we're all bad at it. We're all bad at it.
Yeah.
But I get reminded often that hey man, that thing you're doing for me is not more important than me.
Wow. Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing, yes, but you make sure you're good with me, because that's what sustains you through all of this. That's what gives you. And I don't know, like, I love using the analogy of, like, I have this friend who has this really annoying laugh, and I kind of
We
tease
all
him
have
about
those
it.
things.
But I'm the type of person that if I'm sitting with him long enough and someone says something half funny, I start to laugh a bit like him,
Oh my.
and then I catch myself going, "Oh, you just laughed like Harry." Don't. And it's the same way with Jesus. You want to be the most effective preacher, pastor, creative, leader, friend, husband, father. Then basically you need to be more like Jesus. But how do you become more like Jesus? Well, you hang around with him long enough,
Oh yeah.
and he starts to transform you. That annoying laugh that Jesus has. If you just hang with him long enough, you're going to start laughing annoyingly like him. So that's the first thing. Man, now I've just forgotten the second thing. Maybe that was it. I think in this season, the other thing I'd say is, like, don't, yeah, the church, there's two ways this pans out at the end of the pandemic and everything else that's going on, through the racism, in Australia we had bushfires at the beginning of the year, then we had COVID, and then, like, all of the things that happen, and now the race riots, which are affecting us in Australia a lot because we have so many friends and brothers and sisters that are affected by it.
Yeah.
There's two ways that the church comes out of this. Number one, we rested on our laurels and we allowed to use COVID-19 as an excuse to not sharpen our craft, to not become better, to not get closer to God, to not become the father or the whatever. Or we milk this season for all it's worth.
Yeah.
And if God has told you to write a book, now's the time to start putting pen to paper. If God's called you to become a pastor, now's the time to do that online degree on theology so that you know what the heck you're talking about when you're standing in front of those 10, 100 people that you're meant to be standing in front of. And so my dream and my hope, my prayer would be that we come out of the season the latter, that we hit the ground running, that we're sharper, our craft is more excellent, our minds are more focused on what Jesus cares about. Our church experience is more welcoming and inclusive to all people, where everyone feels like they can welcome home, that they're welcome home, like the sign that's next to you. That if you're a pastor, that you develop more of a pastor's heart in this time, that you operate and you practice that pastoral gift that God's given you so that we can be together again. It's just like, boom, I didn't miss a beat. I don't have to readjust because I was working on it. So milk this season, all creators, milk the season for what it's worth. Get every ounce of juice out of it that you possibly can, so that when this comes to some sort of normality, we can all hit the ground running. We can see the church move forward. We see the kingdom advance, and that the gates of hell will just be in its place.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah,
so good.
that's
We've actually just started a series called Forward, which
nice.
John's been speaking on. So I love that you said moving forward, because that's kind of what we're doing at the minute, moving forward. Things are moving forward, which is good. Things
Yeah,
are.
love
But hey, thank you so, so much for spending time with us, speaking into our creative team. I know they're going to be so blessed by this interview.
that.
Um,
Hopefully.
yeah, no, they will be. No, I was blessed by it, so they definitely will be. But thank you so much for your time, your sacrifice, for everything you're doing. It's been awesome to meet you, and hopefully we can speak again.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, and send my love to your senior pastors